Hello guys, what's going on? In this video I want to talk a little bit about the Evolve Big Alpha. It was running over the whole last Halloween weekend. I was lucky enough to get a key for the PC version and I really enjoyed the game, so I thought I'm going to highlight kind of the positives but also a little bit the negatives that I kind of found during playing up to level 5 or 6, whatever I achieved in the end. So for all of you who don't know what Evolve actually is, it's a quite clever concept in which 5 players play together. One of them plays a monster, and you can see that here in the background, that's me playing as the monster. And 4 players play cooperatively as the hunters. So the hunters have to hunt down the monster. It's a rather big world and you kind of have to hide when you're the monster. In terms of the actual gameplay, it's a wild mix of different styles and genres that we know. I think it's the guys who made Left 4 Dead 2 who are also working on Evolve, so it is a bit of Left 4 Dead 2 in there, but just in terms of the different skill sets that the hunters have, you know, there's a medic, and then there's a trapper, and then there's an assault class. It nearly reminds me a little bit of Team Fortress 2, in which, you know, it's very tactical, you have to work together to achieve something. Also, you have a jetpack, you can fly really high, you know, much higher than in Titanfall, for instance, so it has a hint of Destiny in there. Also, it felt at times to me nearly a bit like a MOBA, right? Like League of Legends or something that you can play in 3D in a first person. So it is really a wild mix of all different styles, which is great. Like I said, it's very tactical. The classes are very nicely balanced. It's quite motivating. So when you play as the monster for 2 or 3 rounds, then you might be motivated to play as an assault class, and then you just choose next round I want to be assault, and then you play as assault. So it's really nicely motivating to switch between the different classes. On top of that, it has a really nice atmosphere, especially when you're a hunter and you first land, you know, coming down from the dropship onto the planet. You'll see it later. I think I put a little bit of assault gameplay in there. It's just great. You're running through this jungle and it's really atmospheric, and you have to find this giant monster. It could be hiding anywhere. However, after playing it 5-10 times, it gets a little bit repetitive, and that reminded me a bit of Titanfall, where when you play it 5 to 10, 20, 30 times, it's just the same thing. The first time you're completely blown away, but then after a while you realize it's very repetitive and it's kind of the same thing. I know that this alpha just included 1 game type, and in the final version of the game they're gonna have many more game types, so we can kind of expect more to come in that. But just speaking about this particular alpha, it was a bit repetitive after a while, and the atmosphere kind of got lost on the way. The alpha itself was running really solid. It didn't crash at all. It seemed quite like a finished game. It had a few problems with the matchmaking in the first evening, but I guess that's fine. You know, a game that is fully based only on multiplayer, there are server problems to be expected. But besides that, it didn't crash. I had no real problems with it. It was running rather smooth. Every now and then you have a few FPS hiccups, but I'm gonna get into that at a later point. A few negative things that I noticed is that it was quite hard for me in the beginning. When I played the first 5 to 10 rounds, I just got crushed by the guys, partially because the matchmaking didn't work too well. They put level 1 guys into lobbies with level 15 guys, and these guys just have obviously 15 levels ahead of you. So it is much more challenging to compete with them, and you just get crushed the first 5 to 10 rounds. And partially a problem with that is that there was no real tutorial. There's a short video that introduces the features of your character to you, like which buttons you have to press to use the abilities of your character, but there is no level in which you can jump in and then just run around and try out your features. So you have to try it out as you go along. You're immediately thrown into a multiplayer game, and that has been proven personally to me like a bit problematic, and it caused some frustration. What also caused frustration is that it was a little bit confusing at times in the beginning, especially when you play as the monster. You have 4 guys jumping around you and they all try to kill you, and it's relatively fast paced then. So you have all these guys jumping on you and you have to hammer them down and try to understand who's the healer and who's the assault guy, and it gets a bit confusing, which kind of adds to the frustration as well. So it's the lack of tutorial and the confusing gameplay in the beginning that just make you lose matches, and you kind of at the point where you're like, oh, that's a bit shit, you know, because you have no real rewarding experience of like winning or dominating. At least that's how it was for me. But then after a while, you kind of get into it and then you get used to it. And then actually the mechanics work really well and it gets less and less confusing as you go along. Another downside a little bit, and it's not really a downside because the game looks great, but it is the CryEngine. I always feel that games built in the CryEngine run a little bit wonky. They just have like this thing that feels a bit like VSync, and even you can switch off VSync, it still feels like there's a slight delay between your mouse movement and the actual movement in the game. If you compare it to games like Titanfall, for instance, you can really see that it has a different pace and that the game does feel a bit slower just in terms of response time of like moving your mouse or moving your controls until it gets into the game. But again, that could be an alpha issue, that could be something that they're addressing in the full version, and I don't really want to judge all games that are made with the CryEngine. It's just something that I noticed, whether it is Crysis or whether it is Star Citizen when you're running around in the hangar. It does have this slightly wonky feel to it that I don't really like, but it wasn't unplayable. You know, it wasn't something that really bugged me to a point that I thought, okay, I have to stop playing the game or whatever. It was still perfectly fine, and I really enjoyed it. The monster abilities really took some time for me to get used to it. You know, you can run really fast and stomp over the hunters, you can throw a stone, you can spit some fire. He has all these abilities that you can also level up, but especially in the beginning I didn't really understand how to control them, so you just kind of randomly hammering the buttons and he's randomly throwing stones, and then after the first 5-6 rounds you realize there is actually an aiming mechanic to it. You can actually aim where you throw the stone. But again, it was a little bit the lack of tutorial. They might have that in the full version, might be just an alpha thing, but it took me a while to get used to like how the monster works and how you have to control its abilities. One more thing that kind of stood out negatively to me was the loading times. It not only took long to kind of get into the lobbies and then get into an actual game, so the loading times of the actual game are really rather long, but also the breaks in between the matches are really long. And that's also something that already bugged me in Call of Duty as well as Titanfall, you know, that every time you finish a match you have to wait your 40 seconds. You know, I know that they want people to work on their classes and stuff, but I don't really do that. So I had that here as well. It bugged me just a little bit, you know, that you had these long breaks between the matches. Again, it could be an alpha thing and might be fixed in the final version, but it bugged me in the alpha, so I thought I'll flag it up. If you were not lucky enough to get one of the keys and try out the Evolve Alpha, I gave a few keys away on my Twitter account. So if you want a chance to win free keys for alphas or early access games in the future, just follow me on Twitter. It's @randomtweetor with an O. You see the link down in the description. Thanks guys very much for watching. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are. Did you play the Evolve Alpha? It would be really interesting to actually hear what your experience is on other platforms. Did you play it on the Xbox One or PlayStation 4? Were the points that I was highlighting the same there, or was it completely different? Let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel and leave me a like if you enjoyed the video. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.